editions of the Chronicles of Narnia have been renumbered in compliance with the wishes of the author C.S. Lewis. So what's Harper basing this on? Where are they getting this? Well, first off, I think it comes from the Lawrence letter. In 1957, an 11-year-old American boy named Lawrence wrote to C.S. Lewis. Lawrence had already read the books. He was looking to go back and reread them. And Lawrence's mother was saying, well, you should read them in the order that, Lewis wrote them in, or that he published them in. And Lawrence was saying, no, maybe now that I've already read them, I know that that's not the order things happen. Maybe I should read them in the order that they happen chronologically, meaning the magician's nephew first. So we asked Lewis for his thoughts on this, and here's Lewis's response. C.S. Lewis said, I think I agree with your order for reading the books more than your mother's. That would mean chronological order. The series was not planned beforehand, as she thinks. When I wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I did not know I was going to write any more. Then I wrote Prince Caspian as a sequel, and still didn't think there would be any more. And when I had done Dawn Treader, I felt quite sure it would be the last. But I found that I was wrong. So perhaps it does not matter very much in which order anyone reads them. Now, people who are defending chronological order like to highlight, they underline, that first part of the letter and say, you see, look, Lewis wanted the books read in chronological order. See, he said, I think I agree with your order, meaning chronological order. And they forget, well, there's a lot of things they kind of forget about. They forget the rest of the letter. At the end of the letter, Lewis says, perhaps it does not matter very much in which order anyone reads them. Lewis didn't seem to really care that much. It was not that big of an issue for him. They're also forgetting the context. First off, Lawrence had already read them. What we really have here is Lewis telling somebody who's already read the books, yeah, go ahead and reread them in chronological order. That's what I would do. And I would say the same thing. I'll agree with Lewis here, of course. If you've already read the books, read them in whatever order you want. I read them in chronological order. I think like the fourth time I read the series, just for fun, I read them in chronological order. I mean, like, if I'm going to tell somebody who's rereading the series, no, don't read them in chronological order, it'll ruin the surprises. You'll be confused when it says that thing about Aslan. That doesn't apply at all. You've already read them. All the surprises are gone. They also forget how many letters Lewis answered every day. I mean, just imagine, writing this letter right here. I mean, Lewis wrote dozens of responses to letters every day. He received an astonishing amount of fan mail, and he answered as much of it as he possibly could. So the context for writing this letter to Lawrence is, one letter, writes another letter, writes another letter. Maybe this was the fifth letter he wrote that day. I wonder if you had just sort of tapped him on the shoulder as he was writing that one and said, hey, just so you know, decades after you write this letter, among the thousands you've written, we're going to be reading this, and it's going to affect the way your books are read. I think he would have chosen his words a little more carefully. But regardless, let's just keep in mind, once again, Lewis was alive for 7 years after completing the series. If he really wanted to change the order of the books, he could have. So I really think the most we can take from this letter is that Lewis felt, a sort of a mild personal preference for chronological order, but he didn't really seem to think it was that big of a deal, and he could have changed the order if he wanted to, and yet he didn't. So I just think by default, you got to stick with publication order. That's the way Lewis left the series when he died. The other thing HarperCollins is basing this on is a memory of Douglas Gresham. That's C.S. Lewis's stepson. And apparently, when they took over the publishing in America, HarperCollins asked Gresham about, what order they should, list the books in. And Gresham said, well, I actually asked Jack himself, that would be C.S. Lewis, I actually asked Jack himself what order he preferred and thought they should be read in, and he said he thought they should be read in the order of Narnian chronology. Now, for analysis purposes, let's just take Gresham and his exact word there and assume those were Lewis's exact words. Let's just say that Lewis's exact words were, yes, I think they should be read in the order of Narnian chronology. Let's say Lewis actually said that. Once again, Lewis just seems to be expressing a mild personal preference for chronological order. And once again, you just have to look at that in light of the fact that he could have changed the order if he wanted to, but he didn't. So maybe he liked to read his own books in chronological order. Obviously, I'm not going to tell C.S. Lewis, no, don't read them in chronological order, it will ruin the surprises. I mean, he's the author of the book. Obviously that's completely irrelevant. So what can we conclude from these two examples? Well, first off, Lewis himself apparently preferred chronological order, but he never asked for the books to be renumbered. He never said, change the order on the spine so that they're in chronological order. He could have done that himself if he wanted to, but he didn't. He also didn't seem to care that much. He said in that letter, maybe it doesn't really matter very much which order they're read in. And so I just think that you have to stick with publication order by default. That's the order that Lewis left them in. So I don't think it should be tampered with. In 2005, just a few months before The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movie came out, HarperCollins released a book called Beyond the Wardrobe, The Official Guide to Narnia. And if you go to page 30 of that book, there's a few pages where it addresses this issue of the two different orders, or they actually make the case for 3 different orders I'll talk about in a second. But at the end of page 30, I think it is, they say, over the years, this has given rise to considerable controversy because few people are familiar with Lewis's wishes. This is rather insulting. It's a fact that the vast majority of C.S. Lewis scholars will tell you publication order is better, that the series just works best that way, and Lewis's intentions, they're just a lot more clear if you read them in publication order for what he was trying to do with the stories. So this is a statement that's just made out of complete ignorance, I think. I was really surprised to see HarperCollins actually write this. And just aside from C.S. Lewis scholars, anybody who really knows Narnia, it's not controversial 90% of those fans will tell you publication order, hands down, that's the best order. So this is a statement, this is a rather insulting statement made out of complete ignorance, I think. I think HarperCollins just doesn't know what they're talking about when they write this. And it's interesting, they include the Lawrence letter. On the next page, they include the letter from Lawrence. But they leave out the end. They actually cut out the part where Lewis said, perhaps it doesn't matter which order they're read in. They actually cut that part out. So I don't think that casts HarperCollins in the best light. They would cut out that pretty key part of the letter. In that same part of the book, they actually try to make the case that there are 3 orders. Trying to add to the confusion here. Yes, there's publication order. Yes, there's chronological order. There's also the order the books were written in. And this is a good observation HarperCollins is making. It is a fact that Lewis did in fact write the books in one order, but then he published them in a different order. I'm not certain what HarperCollins is getting at here. Maybe they're trying to devalue publication order by saying, hey guys, back off. Look, he didn't even really write them in that order. How important is publication order? But I think what they're really doing here is this is a good observation that supports publication order. Said, okay, I'm going to release this one, then I'll release that one, then I'll release that one. That seems to imply on some level some design in publication order. Obviously, I know Lewis did not plan out the series in advance, but that implies some design there. Obviously, we know that when he published The Silver Chair, he had already finished The Horse and His Boy. That's how he was able to tease it in The Silver Chair. So I think that supports publication order, if anything. If HarperCollins is trying to say that that's actually a valid third order, like that should be a recognized third order you could read the books in, that's pretty silly. Most movies are shot out of order. Does that mean that we should watch it's actually valid to watch the movie in the order it was shot? No, that wouldn't make any sense. It's a work in progress. You have to watch the final result. I would guess that most books are probably written out of order. I think many authors like to start their books in the middle. Does that mean we should read the middle of a book first? Of course not. I mean, you have to look at the final product. Apparently, Lewis was planning or thinking about going back and rewriting parts of the series to make it work in chronological order. I've heard that. And a lot of people try to say, you see, he wanted it in chronological order. He was going to get around to just make it all work. You see, it should be in chronological order. But once again, I think this supports publication order. This shows that Lewis was aware it didn't work. He was aware if you're reading the series in chronological order, that there were some problems. There were some things that didn't line up that needed to be fixed, and Lewis never did fix them before his death. So that means you got to stick with publication order. I know a lot of fans who read them in chronological order for the first time. Maybe usually because they just weren't aware of the 2 different orders. They just followed the numbers on the spine. They still loved them and had a great experience with them. They're still 7 great books, no getting around that. But I will say that if you read them in the order that Lewis originally published them in, you'll have a much better experience, and Lewis's intentions shine through a lot better. So if you're watching this and you're trying to decide which order to read them in, it might seem a little weird to go against the number that's on the spine, but let me just assure you, this is the order that they were read in for years, and I think that order was good enough then, and it's good enough now. That order, once again, is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, The Silver Chair, The Horse and His Boy, The Magician's Nephew, and The Last Battle.